Welcome back to another edition of Between Two FARS. I'm Warnke Miller, and I'm joined once again by the amazing Theodore. Ted is the Chief Counsel at Johnson Space Center, and we've been talking about the transformation that NASA has been going through. We're going to begin focusing now on the impacts that this transformation has had on our contracts and on the administration of our contracts. Ted, now that we understand globally what this transition has looked like, how is it impacting our day-to-day work?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, in the past episodes, we were kind of focused a little bit more on the higher level impacts. So now we're gonna get down in the weeds a little bit, and we're gonna talk about the impacts to our day-to-day work, both as an attorney, legal advisor, as well as a procurement official. So remember, we kind of had these two general buckets in terms of different types of contracts and acquisition strategies, past, present, and the future. So on the one hand, we have our traditional DD&T&E, contracts, generally cost reimbursable, single awardee, and on the other hand, we've had this transition towards more service-based, fixed price, generally multi-awardee contracts. So one of the first collateral consequences, which may seem, oh, that's pretty simple. I think this has significant collateral consequences in terms of how not only NASA works, but how attorneys and procurement officials work as well. So with cost reimbursable contracts, it's fairly easy to change requirements in a contract. In fact, that's kind of expected. You're going to have a lot of change requests. I was telling Warnke earlier that when I became a NASA employee after co-oping a fresh out, I was telling her that we had this process in Mission Operations Directorate. We had a cost reimbursable contract for our facilities contract. And we actually had this pretty mature and sophisticated process for change requests, for processing change requests. We had a change request panel that discussed change requests. We had a change request board that made decisions, and each one of these, the panels and boards met bi-weekly, and people would submit change requests for the contract on these forms. So we would have anywhere between 30 to 50 forms at any given time that would need processing. And so it was kind of ingrained in our culture that, hey, we would change the contract. That's just the way it works. And I was also telling Warnke, I was told at the time that a lot of prospective offerors would actually, in their strategy, bid lower on the initial bid in order to make up for it on changes to the contract, because they would get fees to every change request. And she confirmed that is definitely what some prospective offerors did and probably still do.
Yeah, that's in fixed price and in our traditional contracts. But in fixed price, it's more on us. How well did we write that RFP? How well did we anticipate our needs in our statement of work?
Yeah. So, talking about fixed price service-based contracts, because it's firm fixed price, it's relatively difficult to change requirements in a contract. I mean, at least in theory, that's the case. So it's this mindset that NASA civil servants and to an extent contractors believe that, hey, that's just how we do business, is to do changes all the time to a contract. Well, that's a pretty significant, cultural and mindset change when we go from traditional DD&T&E contracts to service-based fixed price contracts. That has to take time for people to truly understand that. And, NASA's not the greatest in writing requirements, not because it doesn't want to. It's typically there's a lot of time pressure to put together these contracts and write these requirements. So even in fixed price contracts, we can come up with issues where certain folks want to change that fixed price contract and actually change the contract. And so the collateral consequence with that is that process really hasn't been, planned. And so we have it's like an unfunded mandate. We have procurement folks who they don't have a lot of experience because they don't have to do it every day, changing a fixed price service-based contract. And B, when they do have to change it, well, they didn't really have They don't have the people to do that. So it's like an unfunded mandate. So the administrative burden is increased if that happens for service-based fixed price contracts. So that's just, a lot of stuff behind just this one row in
Not to
terms of collateral
mention
consequences.
that the services that NASA's going for are pretty cutting edge. They're not always considered routine services, so you can't always anticipate what changes might be around the bend.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this second collateral consequence, it's very similar to the first one, but it's focused on data rights. And it's just a trend that we've been seeing in the intellectual property CLF in terms of, the focus when you had DD&T contracts was on patent and invention rights, because it's relatively easy to ask for more data during the contract period of performance under a DD&T cost reimbursable contract. But for service fixed price contracts, now data rights becomes more of an administrative burden for our intellectual property attorneys. And depending on the contract's terms and conditions, it can be relatively difficult to ask for different types of data if it wasn't predefined, upon contract execution. So our technical folks are very busy. And, although we advise them, hey, you got to really think about data and have a mature data plan, the reality is that people typically don't have the time or the experience to develop mature data plans. So in a lot of cases, we end up we are where we are, for IP attorneys, and they have to just basically advise the best they can based on where they're at and the contract T's and C's. And the bottom line is the workload for IP attorneys has shifted because of this change in acquisition strategy. Traditional DD&T patent and invention rights are typically much more important, higher priority. That's where the workload is. For service-based fixed price, multi-awardee contracts, the workload has shifted from patent and invention rights to data rights. So now data rights becomes predominant in terms of IP attorneys' workload. And it could actually be very high to contract administration time for service-based fixed price contracts for IP attorneys.
That's terrific. I appreciate you kind of giving us this perspective on how we need to handle contract changes and data rights in this new business paradigm. Please come back and join us again next time as we talk through some more of the collateral consequences we can expect to see in our contracts going forward. See you again next time between two FARS.